That's right, you geeks. Welcome into the Echo Screen, the official podcast of the Clan of the Grey Wolf. As always, I am your host, the Commodore, and with me, hopefully finding no problems with the existing stream, is Rue. Rue, how are we looking on the stream front?
Stream status good. So I'm going to assume that YouTube is not lying to me.
Okay. Hey, listen, we'll take it. So, folks, if you were following along with us last time, you know that we had a false start.
Wait. Last time on Echo Screen Live.
There you go. That was basically the show. I know that none of you wanted to listen to even 5 minutes of that. So we stopped. We called it. We iced it. Deep sixed it. Whatever you want to say. And we decided we would just do a show this week. So you'll get a show on back-to-back weeks, which is really, when you think about it, like Christmas in March.
It's like Christmas and Hanukkah all together. It's like you got a Jewish mom and a Christian dad. That kind of fell apart. Never mind.
And the Easter Bunny's coming.
Apparently your audio is lo-fi, but you know.
Hey, listen, that's your fault, not mine.
I think that's your fault, not mine.
Because I am very, very hi-fi.
I was talking to a coworker of mine today who sometimes listens to the show on the podcasting podcast, because we're podcasts. Search for Echo Screen Live. We are. But I was talking to him too. He's like, I was saying something about how you live up in the Northeast, and he's like,
yes.
What? I'm like, yeah. He's like, when did you move out there? I was like, I don't know, like 3 years ago. I'm like, wait, you do the show like remotely? Like, yeah. Like, yeah. So the fact that he could not guess that you're not sitting next to me in the official Clan of the Grey Wolf studio recording this makes me happy in my cockles and my heart. Maybe even the sub cockles.
Right. Now thank you, Dennis Leary. Now please make my audio hi-fi, please. Thank you.
What were you here,
folks? What are we going to talk about today? Yeah. What is the topic du jour of this here delayed Echo Screen Live?
I think it should be Hamilton the musical.
Well, I'm going to tell you what it's not. Hamilton the musical. However, what it is, what we tried to do last time, what it is.
See, now you're getting into
pay-to-win games.
Now you're getting into Hamilton. Sorry. Go ahead.
Right. No, I'm not getting into Hamilton. But close. Pay-to-win games. Games that you can pay to win, and spend more money, get better at it.
And then you go home because you won the whole game.
Because you won the whole game, because you bought it.
With a little bit of a lighter wallet and a little bit more knowledge in your heart.
Right.
I don't know.
We're going to talk about that tonight. That is the topic du jour. Those of you that have joined the program before, may have listened previously, know there are three portions to the program. First, we start off with the tids and bits. Then we get into the topic du jour. And lastly, we will have question and answer portion of the program where people can ask questions and we will answer them live here on the air. Or for those of you listening via podcast in the past.
I have a question.
Yes.
Can we actually do a musicals episode at some point? Because I think that would be really amusing.
I have no time nor energy to write a musical episode.
No. I'm not talking about like Scrubs, the musical episode where we actually sing. I'm talking about where we just talk about musicals.
Oh. You don't want to do that with me.
Yeah, I do.
I don't think you and I would have a very good conversation.
No, I bet you like more musicals than you think you do. Okay, that does it.
Oh, no, I do.
We're doing a musical episode.
Done. Right, well, let's write it down. Don't ever do musical episode. Okay.
Hey, what's your tit end or bit? Are you taking the tit or the bit this week?
I'll take the bit.
Okay.
All right. So my bit this week is actually about. It was going to be the one for last time, but we didn't get the whole thing worked out. Is actually about AI. So there was
the movie with Haley Joel Osment.
Yes, which surprisingly, he has not aged well.
He has such a tiny face for his head. It's kind of creepy.
Is it weird? Yeah.
A little bit.
Do you watch Drunk History by any chance?
Not if I can help it.
Okay, Comedy Central is pretty bad, uniquely bad in their programming, but Drunk History is phenomenal. And he was on an episode. He played I think he played a newsie, if I remember correctly, like one of the newsies. Anyway,
okay.
It was very like the people that they bring into the show is kind of random, but it's awesome.
Good news note there. So mine is, just kidding.
Yeah. So I wanted to talk about the Google DeepMind project that has
Oh,
now
that's right.
effectively done what people thought even 10 years ago, 20 years ago was impossible, which is to defeat a human in the game of Go. Now, if you know anything about, say, chess, for example, computers have been beating humans at chess for a very long time.
Like 20 years now.
Yes.
Deep Blue, the IBM
Yes.
computer that beat Gary Kasparov, I think, in the mid 90s.
Yes.
First time a computer ever beat a human at chess. And then Kasparov came back in the next game using a new gambit that the computer didn't anticipate. Won that again. But then a few years later, computers were always beating humans at chess, and now it's just a given. It's not exactly a solved game in which, for any combination of moves, a computer can beat you, more or less. Like checkers is a solved game, but it's
Right.
Computers will handily beat humans at chess.
Yes.
Nowadays.
Checkers is solved because a human can play optimal strategy against a computer and it will always force a stalemate.
Yes.
Chess is not like that. Chess is not solved yet. So optimum strategy will always win. But Go is a unique challenge. So I actually read an interesting article from 1997 that said, which was in the news this past week because of this whole AlphaGo, Google DeepMind beats a human player. And not just any human player, by the way, this is a legendary player, the world champion in Go, 5-time world champion.
Yeah, one of the grandmasters, so to speak. I don't even know if that's really a rank in Go, but whatever.
I'm sorry, he's 18-time champion. I had the wrong number there. It was a 5-game match, and Lee Sedol won exactly one of those games in the 5-game match. So he was beat pretty handily, to say the least. Now, Go is a really challenging game because it's, again, unlike chess. In chess, there's millions of different scenarios for every single move you make. For Go,
Trillions.
it's much more of a strategic game. So there are pieces, there are plays that you will make in Go that seem like they are completely arbitrary, but actually end up being meaningful later on. These are things that don't come very easily to machines. They don't work these things out very well. So the fact that AlphaGo, powered by Google DeepMind, has done this is a pretty astounding accomplishment, I think, and a lot of other people do. But the reason I think it's newsworthy is because a lot of people are kind of hailing this as the new AI era that is now upon us. Because we have achieved something that people thought would take at least a century, and they did it in about 10, 15 years. This is kind of the mark of things to come. Imagine what computers will do 5 years from now, right?
Right.
Do you buy that?
The thing is that when it comes to AI, you can talk about so many things. I mean, in some ways, it's the brute force ability of computers is always improving. Moore's law is still very alive and well in some ways. And then there's the advent of quantum computing, which takes strides all the time, to the point where, that the electrons going through the tiny transistors on a chip are getting too big for the transistor. That's when you got to go to quantum computing, basically.
Right. And once the quantum computer is invented, pretty much all the encryption we have to this point will be useless.
Until you get,
which is a scary
quantum encryption or something like that.
Yeah.
Anyway, my point being is that the thing is that things like Watson, which famously a few years ago, like 5 or so years ago,
a long time ago, surprisingly long time ago, interestingly,
was able to beat humans at Jeopardy. Was
able to beat humans at looking stuff up really fast.
Well, basically, I mean, but that's what humans do. Is like you have to. Basically, what Watson was able to do is take a question in normal English. I mean, this is what our phones, not exactly to that level of Watson, but our phones do that all the time. Okay, Google and things like that. It takes normal English, tries to figure out what you're asking, what you're saying, searches through basically all of human knowledge, and gives you the answer, in a way that is useful to you. And
which is pretty astounding.
That is one of the most exciting advances in AI. Okay, Google and Siri even more Google that we've seen in the at least the past decade, I would say. So to say that, where are we going with that? Of course, I think that is Google's secret sauce more than anything else. They are able to use machine learning to do incredible things. And this goes back to our episode about self-driving cars. To be able to create a mind that is able to navigate traffic successfully is astounding. And they are darn near close in a lot lot of ways.
And this is exciting stuff.
This is the future of computing. It's not so much. I mean, yes, like I said before, it's the raw computing power increases, but it's also having machines that can think. To colloquially use the term,
right? I mean, they can't really think like we think. They can.
They're not sentient.
They're not sentient, and they also don't really think, quote unquote. I mean, it's more of an adaptive learning, I would say. We're probably getting into semantics. The point is, I thought that was really interesting, and it could show what computers are capable of, and what really it's more about software, not computers, but what software is capable of moving forward, right? That's, to me, is always the most interesting part. If you watch Star Trek: The Next Generation, right, no one really focuses. No one would really focus on how amazing of a feat data is in terms of software engineering. If you watch the show, it's always about the hardware. He's got the positronic brain with blah, 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 all the stuff, right?
Yeah. He's like, I can do 16 trillion calculations per second and stuff like that. Yeah.
Right. And it's always a focus on that, right? Because that's what was supposed to wow us in the 80s and 90s. Really now, I think what we see is that it's so much more about the software, right? Because there's so much more interesting problems that can be solved with software, that the computing power almost becomes just a commoditized resource. But anyway, so really interesting stuff. I thought that was cool. And don't worry, I don't think this means that, we're all going to be ruled by our computer overlords anytime soon.
The possibility of machines actually achieving computers, I should say, actually achieving sentience is more a philosophical discussion than anything else, I think, because then you have to dig down deep into what is sentience.
Right.
Which we are totally not prepared for right now, I think, to have the conversation. But
I think somebody even folks that kind of began the current or what we would think of as a more modern, not contemporary, but modern science fiction, like an Arthur C. Clarke or an Isaac Asimov, would look at what is being accomplished today in AI and would be like, see, I told you. Because, for them, I don't think they necessarily would be able to tell the difference between sentience and what we see. But to your point, you're absolutely right.
Yeah, it's practically magic. Wait, is it?
Yes.
Who said that the sufficiently advanced technology is akin to magic?
I don't know.
Was that Asimov or was that Bradbury? It was one of the big sci-fi writers. Anyway, I'm sure someone in the chat will catch up in about 20 seconds and tell us.
Yeah, they'll do the Watson thing.
They won't. Yeah, they won't look it up. They'll know. They'll have that stored in their own personal data banks. Anyway, okay. Quick news tidbit.
Brains. Yeah.
Quick news tidbit for me. Last week, my original tidbit was that Sony has announced their VR system, their VR gear, virtual reality gear, will be sold later this year for $400, and that's on top of the price of a PS4. So if you want to do virtual reality with Sony, that'll cost you $800 minimum. And
it comes with a little box, right? Like a little box you hook up to your PlayStation that gives it more computing power.
And that's cheap. So far that compared to the Oculus, which we already talked about a little while ago, being ridiculously expensive.
Oh yeah.
For the whole system, that's relatively cheap. $800. Do you see that as a low enough barrier to entry for virtual reality to become a big deal? Arthur C. Clarke, by the way, said that
there you go.
Magic one.
See, I feel bad that I called the man up from beyond the grave and I couldn't even get the quote right, or
ring.
I couldn't even identify your quote,
Mr. Clarke.
Yeah, it depends, right? I haven't used this thing. Is it any good? if you stick your head in the damn thing and it doesn't work very well, then who cares?
Yeah,
I mean, you and I used
we've done
Oculus.
the Oculus Rift. We haven't played a game
Right.
on it, but we've seen quite a few tech demos that were impressive. Let's assume
Impressive in a fully contained environment where the
Yeah.
compute was completely obfuscated from us, so we had no idea what was going on with the computing.
Right.
They could have had friggin' crazy supercomputers back there, and we'd have no idea. Right?
I'm gonna skip. I'm gonna spoiler alert you. I don't think this is gonna be the big breakthrough that some people are hoping for VR.
I think you're right.
I was talking with one of my coworkers today about this, about the Sony VR, and he was like,
Yeah.
"Oh yeah, I'm totally gonna get that. I can't wait." I'm like, "You don't even have a PS4." He's like, "I don't care. I'll buy it." I'm like, "All right,
Why?
There's one, but
Well,
I just don't see that being the everything." So,
well, it could be. I mean, this could be the next Wii, right? I think
you
what they're
never
hoping
know,
is it's
but
going to be
I really am still
you and me
not
both. My point is,
sold.
what they're hoping for
Oh, of course,
is that this thing gets picked up so that it's not just gamers, it's not just people that would normally buy a game system, but everybody has to have this because it's the new hotness, and you have to have it in your freaking living room, or else you're a loser.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Behind the
I lied before. It's actually like $849 plus tax, and that's before you buy any games. So,
Yeah.
and we don't.
Well, who needs games? If you have VR, you can just dance around the room, and who needs games?
Real quick, extra tidbit, since we just said the magic word "we," there have been pictures floating around since Nintendo's being super quiet about the upcoming Nintendo NX, their next console, which is supposed to have more information probably in the next couple months.
Yeah.
Before
Do you
E3.
believe that recent post about the controller and what it looks like? Do you believe that?
I'm posting this picture of the controller. I could believe that that's the controller. If you can't see it, if you're on the podcast, it basically.
I think I had the same reaction I did when I first saw the Wii controller, and that ended up working out okay.
No, and that's the thing, right? Is like, well, people seem to have this reaction for the past few Nintendo. Actually, like going back as far as the Nintendo 64, it's like no one's ever liked the controllers for these Nintendo game consoles at first sight. That doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be a hit or a failure. It's just funny to me. Anyway,
Right.
Looking at it, it's kind of like an oval with a couple of nubs, and other than that, it looks to be a touchscreen. About the size of a phone, really roughly, though longer and not as wide. So if that's the NX controller, that's interesting. Certainly interesting. The thing is that everyone and their mother has a hot take. Like, here's my hot take. Nintendo's doomed.
Take.
You know, and that's come on. Let's. It's interesting. That's all we can really say about it. It's like, oh, okay, maybe it'll be worthwhile.
And nobody knows anything about it.
Yeah.
Maybe there's 14 other pieces that go to it, right?
gotta
Maybe
see
it turns into friggin' Optimus Prime and destroys your house. Who knows?
We got to see this thing in action, and we know so little about the NX. It actually makes me angry because my Google News, whenever I go to like my little Google News feed, and it's like, oh, you like Nintendo? Here's some news about Nintendo, and it's always some clickbaity rumor article about Nintendo NX.
Yeah.
Gotta kill your pets.
You mean like the rest of YouTube at this point?
Yeah,
Pretty much.
Yeah. Which reminds me of a hot take I got.
No, don't give us your hot take.
Speaking of
put it in a video.
Speaking of killing your pets, so the cats went to the vet today. Here's something really random for you.
And you killed them?
And I killed them. That's it.
Oh, wow. That's the story. Thanks for ruining my day.
No, they were fine, but they get back and looking over the receipts and bills and stuff for them, being little buttholes. And Cooper is now 11 years old. Therefore, he is labeled as a senior cat.
Oh,
like,
so his bill goes down.
He's an old cat. Here's the kicker.
He gets the $1 coffee at Burger King.
Yeah, exactly. He has to go eat dinner at like 4 p.m. and then go to sleep by 6. Well, okay, that actually does sound like him, but no. But here's the kicker: is that they charge $5 more for the senior cat. Like, oh, come on, he should get a discount anyway.
See?
All right, there's my hot take on killing cats. Anyway.
Yeah. Well, you didn't actually kill a cat, so you just made everybody's heart stop. Thank you. Okay, folks, let's move past the old tids and bits. That was good. There was more news than what I think we even wanted to talk about, but that's the way the show works.
We've skipped like a month, so yeah.
Yeah. So let's get into the topic du jour. You had brought up the idea. We did a topic many moons ago on free to play games, and there is kind of an offshoot of free to play games.
Freemium games specifically.
Freemium games. That's right. You're absolutely right. Freemium games because they are free to play, but not necessarily to be any good at or have any fun with.
Right. You get little extra.
Pay for that.
You get extra stuff if you throw a few shekels their way.
Right. Now this brought up I think an ancillary topic equally worthy of a show like this one, which is really around the games that have been around for a long time, maybe that aren't even electronic, that are pay to win. Mm-hmm. And I think this is a great idea. So why don't you tell us a little bit about how this came up?
Yeah.
And why you think you want to talk about this?
Yeah. So there were a few people that have actually been like, "Is this really similar to that freemium games topic you did?" And like, kind of. There's some overlap, but at the same time, no. So I was initially wanting to do this topic because I'm not big on mobile gaming.
Yeah.
I've played mobile games, but I'm not like, oh my God, I got to play this game. This is the best thing ever. I'm like, okay, whatever. Yeah. That's a nice little diversion. But I have gotten involved in 2 games lately. One has been out for a while, and one just launched about a month or so ago. The first being Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes, which is a mobile game that is essentially an RPG. It's like turn. Oh man, what do they call them? Like the old classic Final Fantasies. It's turn-based.
Oh, okay.
RPG battling, and that's it. It's just battles. That's really all there is.
Oh, okay. So it's like Final Fantasy Tactics,
except without the little map grid thing.
Oh, so it's 2 dimensions. It's just 2-dimensional.
Well, it's not moving around. It's just battles. Now you can select battles, and there's different arenas, and you can fight against other players and things like that in a manner.
Yeah, I guess I just mean it's like a side scroller. Like there's no 3 dimensions to it. Like I'm not moving units around a battlefield.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And it's surprisingly deep though. It's surprisingly catchy. You can play the game completely for free. There's a lot of different characters you can pick up and level up and get new powers and blah, blah, blah. They have everything from like, Darth Sidious to Rey and Finn from the newest Star Wars. And,
wow.
It's actually pretty fun. It's published by EA. I've put some money into that. Actually it's like Google Play Rewards, so I haven't actually put my money into it, but, if you put money into it, you can get more characters. You get characters quicker, I should say. You can get, the stuff you need to power them up quicker. And again, notice I say quicker because you can get to the exact same point everyone who puts in $10,000 into the game does. It's just going to take you longer. But it's possible. The other game is the Star Trek Timelines game, which we first played at PAX East.
Yep, I remember that.
It was very early.
My card around here somewhere for the code.
Yeah. And it was, this is a little bit different. There's like kind of ship battles, kind of away team missions where you have to like use skills to get past dilemmas, things like that. But it is a much jankier game, and it is much more pay to win. It's kind of buggy. Well, it is buggy, but it also bugs me. I stick with it because it's Star Trek and in the hopes that they will make it better in the near future. But it's like you are so far ahead of everyone else if you pay money for this game to get different characters and this, that, and the other, that you can get stuff that freemium or free players cannot get at all. Certain special characters and things like that. And I was thinking about that. It's like these are these 2 games that have on paper the same type of model, this freemium model. I would see the Star Trek game as more pay to win. The Star Wars game, not so much. And that leads me to believe or it makes me ask the question, like, is pay to win really a bad thing? Or is it just frustrating for the people that don't pay? If that makes any sense. Is the Star Wars model where it's like you can get ahead faster if you pay money, but you can still get there, really inherently better than the, if someone pays money to these Star Trek people, don't they deserve a little extra maybe that the free people can't get?
Yeah.
So and I have another I have an extra bit of that story I want to go on, but I want to stop here and get your take on that first.
Yeah, first of all, I think there is a divide, as you said, right, between kind of the free to play and the pay to win games, and it's interesting to see that divide, right? I played a game for a long time on Android called Honor Bound. It's also on iOS now, by a company called Juicebox Games, which is phenomenal. They are an amazing developer, and they did a great job with that game. Similar to what you're talking about, just with a fantasy world that they created themselves. And anyway, very interesting stuff. But that game was the same way you're talking about, where you could advance, you didn't have to spend anything, and you could really still have fun and play a long time and have a rewarding experience. You just, when you get into the arena or whatever, you're going to see people that spend a ton of money, and you're just going to have to deal with that.
The whales, basically.
Yeah, exactly. And there's always going to be that. However, nothing was really locked out to you. Every mode was available. It's just really about, like you said, progressing quickly enough. So now, in terms of your question about, is it okay? Yeah, I mean, I think it's perfectly fine, right? If a company can make money and can sell a game that supports itself through, pay to win type scenarios, right? And everybody is paying to win, right? Then great for them, right? It's probably not a game that I'm going to like to play, because I'll be honest with you, I played Honor Bound for maybe a year. I didn't spend a dime. On that game, because it's just like it for me. That's like, it's like against my wiring as a 90s video game kid to get a game and then spend money inside of it. Mm-hmm. So what I can tell you is I think that's totally fine. It's just not a game that I'm ever going to play.
And I think you hit on it for me too. And maybe this is a generational thing, or we're just different that way, because there are people, I read some of these forums, and there are people who spend, in my mind, ridiculous amounts of money, upwards of at least $1,000. I'm not saying it's a lot of people, but we talked about this during the freemium episode. These are the people that these game companies are targeting to some extent, one way or another, in all these games. They don't so much care about the people that plunk down $5 on the game and enjoy themselves.
Right.
I mean, I'm sure the developers do on some level, but that's not how they pay their bills. They pay their bills by these people that go and they plunk down $500, $1,000, $2,000 on a mobile game. They exist.
Yes.
And they openly post about it on the forums. And to me, that's like, you could get your
what are you doing?
You could get your PlayStation 4 with VR helmet for that. You could, and it's kind of silly to me, especially because, and that's a harsh term to say silly, but it is silly to me, because to me it's like buying a game, buying Final Fantasy VI, taking it home, and you're like, I can put in 70 hours and play this game, or if I send my credit card information to Square Enix, I can basically just, have it automatically play by itself through the game and win in 10 minutes. Yay! Right. I win. It's like, that's not fun. Or it might be fun for like 10 minutes. It's like having a game genie. I'm sure everyone who has ever had a game genie or an action replay or anything like this as a kid knows this feeling. It's like when you first get it, you're like, whoa, I can play Super Mario Brothers with infinite lives. That's cool. Right. You play for a little while, and you're like, it is novel at first, but then you're like, okay, I'm kind of tired of this. There's a reason why they aren't designed.
You're just like aren't designed that committing way. Suicide over and over again and it becomes entertaining to see all the creative ways you can die at that point.
Right, exactly. And it's another reason.
The game completely evolves into something else.
Excuse me. It's another reason why some of these arcade games that were ported to home consoles don't work out as well as they did in the arcade, where it's like, oh, you got to pay more money to live. When you have effectively infinite lives and the challenge is gone, it's not fun anymore.
No, and I think So I recently have been replaying in the little spare time that I have, which is not much. Castlevania Symphony of the Night.
Yeah.
And there are things I remember. There are plenty of things I don't remember, even though I played it like 40 times at this point. Especially the early parts where I would just be testing the game or whatever. But the what's interesting is that the stuff that sticks in my head are like all the spells, right? Mm-hmm. So I know Soul Steal, which basically hits everything on the screen and gives you life for every hit you make, right? I know that thing by heart. And so one of the first things I did when I walked in was like, oh, I think I know Soul Steal. And I did it, and it just popped up and everything died on the screen. And I went, man, because I already know the spell, and you're not supposed to know that spell at that point, right? Mm-hmm. You're supposed to randomly find that spell as you're like running around like crazy.
Soul Steal.
Soul Steal, right? So because I know it's so early in the game, it took a lot of the competition out of some of the boss fights. I was laughing because I did a boss fight earlier. It's like the big dramatic music starts, everything goes crazy, and I just do Soul Steal one time, and the boss literally died. So it was this huge anticlimactic thing, and I just went, that kind of cheapened the experience. I'm not going to do that ever again. But it made things unfair. So imagine if you so that's a perfect example.
But imagine you had to pay $100 to use that Soul Steal.
You get Soul Steal as soon as you start the game. You have to pay $100 for it, right? So if I had known that walking into it, I can tell you the game is less fun knowing that spell, right? Mm-hmm. Right from the beginning. The game is incredibly fun if you get halfway through it, and then you realize that there's this cool spell called Soul Steal. Holy crap! What if I had known that when I battled whatever, right? And it would be so much easier. So that's exactly the concept I'm hearing you lay down, right? Mm-hmm. To me, that cheapens the whole experience to a certain extent. Now I'm having a great time playing Symphony of the Night because I can just not cast Soul Steal and try to beat a boss, au naturel. My point is that it would cheapen the experience for me to spend money to have that kind of an experience, only to then be so much better or be so dominating over the game.
And so here's where I want to get into and this doesn't have to be a terribly long topic because I mainly wanted to hit this next point and then that's about it. But this brings me back to, this is not just pay to win games are not just in the mobile gaming realm or even video gaming realm. The other big thing I'm thinking about is, in particular, the customizable card games that were a boom in the 90s that we were a part of. We played games pretty regularly. We played games like Magic the Gathering, Star Trek customizable card game, Star Wars customizable card game. You also played things like Legend of the Five Rings.
Legend of the Five Rings, yeah.
Stuff like that.
Yep.
Now of those,
Pokemon, I didn't play that.
I didn't play that, but that was also a big thing. It still kind of is.
Yu-Gi-Oh!
Right. And so those are also, in a manner of speaking, to different extents, pay-to-win games. You can go out and buy, all the Black Lotuses in Magic the Gathering. Not all the Black Lotuses, but enough to stack them all in your deck. You can buy I can't even think of some of the biggest cards in that. Sarah Angels and Fireballs and whatever. You can spend a lot of money on a Magic deck and kick a lot of ass with it. Mm-hmm. And the thing is that Wizards of the Coast realized fairly early on they were making a lot of money when the game was really popular and the prices of cards were going up and people just wanted to get those really great cards and they were willing to spend lots of money to get it. But they realized that was killing the game. And they needed to dial back on it. Like for the short-term profit to decrease, or I'm sorry, to keep the game long-lived, they had to reduce their short-term profit in order to keep it interesting for everyone. And so to the outcry of a lot of people playing the game, they changed a lot of the rules in tournaments. You can't use these cards. You can't use these cards. They would print lots and lots and lots of copies of cards that were very powerful in later sets, so that they weren't just super. You didn't have another Black Lotus situation. Black Lotus, if you don't know, is just one of those really early Magic the Gathering cards that there were not very many of, and it's a very powerful card, and it's super expensive even to this day. And there was a large outcry. But the thing is that Magic, the Gathering, is upwards of 25 years old at least, and it is going really strong today. Still
maybe even stronger than it was in the 90s.
Some might. I don't have numbers, but I've read things about. I don't have them off the top of my head, but I've read things about how Magic is kind of in one of its best positions it's ever been in.
I think it is. I mean, I live in a very small town. There are 2 game stores within 5 miles of my house that do Friday Night Magic.
Yeah,
that's pretty amazing, right? Like, I mean, it's a it's like a national phenomenon now.
And I have a friend who got into. We didn't even touch on Hearthstone, which is a Blizzard Magic-ish online game, which is huge. Right. But I have a friend.
Magic the Gathering.
Exactly, I have a friend who got into that, and he's like, "Oh man, I gotta try Magic," and now he's into Magic. So it's stuff like that. Hearthstone, and so there's kind of this on any of these games where you can get better by spending money. It's like a continuum of extreme pay to win and moderate pay to win. On the moderate side, you have things like Hearthstone. You have things like Magic the Gathering and that Star Wars game, Galaxy of Heroes I was talking about, where it's like you can get slight advantages if you pay a lot of money into it, but someone who doesn't put much into it can still beat you. It can still happen if you use the right metagaming, if you use the right tricks and tactics, and you're smart. Some of these other games, like the Star Trek Timelines game and things like even Hearthstone, if you put a lot of money into it, you're basically going to win. Yes. And not just that, but these other customizable card games from the 90s, the Star Wars and Star Trek games, which aren't around anymore because people got tired of them. For lots of various reasons. Really arcane rules that just got bigger and bigger, but also the fact that they were super pay to win. That gets boring after a while. It might be a great shot in the arm profit-making venture for a short time, but it's going to die out after interest wanes, after that Game Genie effect takes hold, and people are like, okay, I can beat everyone. I'm not interested in it. Either you get tired of beating everyone, or you get tired of getting beat up on all the time, and it just kills the game. And Magic avoided that. I think the Star Wars game's avoiding that, unless Star Trek Timelines does something, or even Hearthstone. I've heard a lot of people complaining about Hearthstone recently getting too much pay to win. They might have troubles too. So,
well, what's funny is you're talking about Magic: The Gathering as a customizable card game, which had that, I think, the revelation of their long-term profitability and how they were going to protect that. They took the old model in many ways of pay to win and made it their online game. So if you go play Magic online now, that's what it is.
That's true.
I mean, you can't win long term. I mean, you can win, right? But you have to get very lucky.
Yeah.
To win without spending a dime on the free to play Magic the Gathering game, right? Mm-hmm. So it's interesting. Even there, right? They have seen the value in trying to force people into different scenarios online. But yeah, these are cool. These are cool thoughts. I mean, when we were playing Magic in the 90s, I don't know that we ever actually sat down and kind of thought to ourselves, man, this game's really unfair because if we just had more money, we could just totally overwhelm everybody else. Mm-hmm. As a kid, I never really thought about that. I mean, I don't really know why. It was more like, hey, let's put the right strategy together. I just don't have the right pieces here. I haven't thought about the right combinations. And that was kind of the point, right?
Right.
So, it's weird from a perspective scenario as well, because as we got older, we kind of looked at it and went, what the hell? Of course, right? If I spent more money, I'm just going to beat the crap out of everybody else. So, maybe this is just a part of kind of growing up in consumer economics. And we realize after time that all these games are totally rigged if you spend more money. And really the only way to start out with the same pieces on the board is to just play chess and realize that both sides are exactly the same.
Well, yeah, exactly. And that's one of those things that maybe you can be cynical about as you grow up. Is like, oh man, these games are just trying to get more money out of me. Well, of course, they're a business. That's what they're trying to do. They're not just trying to make you have fun out of the goodness of their heart, and then go off and prance off into chocolate and unicorn land. They're trying to make money. But the thing is that you can be kind of cynical about it and realize that and still enjoy the game. You know, that's like every once in a while it's like, oh man, I'm enjoying this game. Yeah, this thing over here looks like a decent deal. I'll put some money into that. Sure, why not? You know, it's an exchange of money can be exchanged for goods and services. You know,
exactly.
That's okay.
What an amazing concept, right?
But things that are hard play to win games, or sorry, pay to win games, are they can do that. I'm not against that as a thing. I'm not saying that you're evil if you do that, but it can be short-sighted for your development.
Long-term profitability.
Thank you. That's the best way to put it. So.
Yeah, but I mean, look at something like you know, even something like World of Warcraft, for example. You know, which I think is waning in terms of its popularity, right as this new movie's coming out, right?
Right.
Waning in popularity, but you know, how did they keep that model so profitable for so long? Because most games don't have that kind of arc for a decade, right? It's not something in the game world that happens that way. So, you know, to a certain extent, they have to keep people coming back for reasons that you and I probably don't understand because we don't make these kinds of games, right? But the fact that Magic is going 25 years later, as strong as it ever was, is pretty amazing to me.
I did not expect it.
No, and if you spend some time looking at the way the community organizes, I've talked about being in the Magic the Gathering subreddit, all these other things, you realize that there's plenty of cool stuff. So, like, I am so intimidated now by Friday Night Magic, I would never show up. Like, I'm intimidated by that fact because I have all of my cards are from sets that are so old, people are just going to be like, what the heck? What are you doing here, right?
But that's the beautiful thing.
Yeah, but what's funny? Is that when you show up to Friday Night Magic, they have full-blown tournaments. They're like, hey, anybody, you can have any cards that are pre-Mirage. Anybody's got pre-Mirage cards, you guys play over here. And it's like, this is great, right? You're playing with pre-Mirage. You're playing pre-Ice Age or, you know, whatever, right?
Pre-Ice Age. My God, Grandpa. Settle down.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what they'd say, which is why I don't go. Thank you. The point is that you know, there's so much stuff out there now. It's almost intimidating because, like, every year we would go to PAX East, there'd be a new set, and we'd look at these cards and go, "This is incredibly powerful, and I just got this for free," right? And you're just like, you know, do you remember when like what was it, the Northern Paladin cost like 4 mana, and it was like a 2/2, and or a 3/3, I guess, and you're just like, this is the greatest thing ever. You can't, you know, I mean, how many times can you invent a 3/3 character that's cast with 4 mana, right? It's just you're gonna do that over and over and over again. They've answered the call to make it exciting and to make it fun, and not make it pay to win at the same time.
Right. And there are there are also some people in the chat talking about the whole addiction portion of this, which is something we talked about in the freemium episode as well. But I mean, that's kind of why whales exist in the first place. You stop and think, why would any sane person ever spend $100 on a mobile game, let alone $1,000? And the thing is like, some people just like really have that addictive personality. I know I do in certain instances, where they're just like, yeah, what's $5 here, $5 there, and $50 there to buy some stuff in this game that I like to play.
Right.
And especially if there's a gambling type of game mechanic to it, if you want to call that a game mechanic, but a mechanic.
Right.
That's kind of a field of what we're talking about here. We talked about that in the freemium episode if you want to listen to that. But yeah, I mean that is.
It's a component here.
It is a component. I mean, it's something somewhat worrisome to.
But you could say the same thing about liquor stores, right? We talked about the South Park episode when we were talking last time, right? So I won't go into it, but yeah, I mean, the fact of the matter is, I think some of these folks do rely on the heavy spenders. They rely on the whales out there because that's what keeps them in business. One of the reasons that I really appreciate Honor Bound by Juice Box is that you know, I had a tremendous amount of fun with it, and I never spent any money on it. And that means that somebody out there probably spent $1,000 on it, which more than paid for my experience, right? Pretty cool, you know?
Yep.
All right, so we're not necessarily in favor of pay to win, but we're certainly not going to shut those people down. I don't think they're necessarily evil. It's just a weird way to play.
Yeah, and they're probably going to hurt themselves in the long run anyway. So,
do you remember when you could buy? Maybe you can still do this. I don't know, but like you could buy someone would sell their services in World of Warcraft.
Yeah,
like you just go and sell. Like go take my character and level them up to 100.
Yeah, or gold farming, things like that. Yeah. I think they cracked down on that a bit.
Yeah, but that's kind of the same concept, right? Like I'm just gonna go to work, and by the time I get home from work, my character will be awesome, and I'll go have fun, playing.
Yeah, and it kind of reminds me of that one of the best episodes of South Park ever, the Make Love Not Warcraft, where they spend weeks grinding, killing squirrels or whatever, and just to take down this one guy, and then afterward, like, oh, what do we do now? What do you mean? We play the game.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
The exact same thing. It's like
exact same thing.
Yeah, just grinding. That's one of the reasons I can't so much get into MMOs, because it's it feels like a job after a while. And that, honestly, that with these games that I enjoy, like the Star Wars and even the Star Trek game, it's like after a while I know I'm going to just stop playing it because it's going to feel like a job more than having fun.
That is right. And
that's fine. I got my enjoyment out of it.
Well, I think you grow up after a little while and you realize that.
No, you grow up.
You have an actual real job and you don't want another job playing a video game.
Right. Unless it's The Sims. Then that's always fun.
The Sims. And then you're just watching somebody else do the same thing you do all day. All right. So, good. So I think we covered pay to win pretty well. It's time now to move into the third portion of the program, which is question and answer. We're moving along tonight. I don't want to jinx us, but we're moving along pretty well here tonight. Folks, if you have questions that you would like for us to answer during this here program, pretty simple to do. All you have to do, if you're following along in chat, click on my name, Commodore 128, and send me a private message. That's one way to submit questions. The other way to submit questions is to tweet at It's the Commodore. That's me. Already received some questions, and if I like your question enough, it's good, then I'm gonna ask it right here, and we're gonna answer it live on the air. Okay.
And don't forget, you can hit us up on the iTunes or Android podcatching device of your choice. Just search for Echo Screen Live, subscribe, and you can eventually get episodes in your feed.
Since Google Play picked up the whole podcast concept, I have noticed a tremendous uptick in podcast commercials on Google Play. You notice this? Do you use Google Play Music?
I use Beyond Pod.
Oh, I thought you were going to tell me. Not that. I thought you were going to say. I talk more about streaming service, right? So, like, I use Google Play as a streaming service. But there's like this huge ramp up now of commercials about podcasts. That actually sound really interesting.
Really?
Yes, that sounds really, really interesting.
That's interesting. I've never heard a podcast
it's cool
commercial
stuff.
Before.
Yeah. Cool.
No, I usually use Beyond Pod for the podcast, and then I still use Pandora for most of my music streaming. So.
Yes.
But I hear that Google Music's pretty good nowadays. You hate Pandora?
I hate Pandora now. Pandora sucks now, man. It's just not good.
That's how I found out about Hamilton the musical.
Oh, great. Well,
I was listening to my Heathers the musical, and Hamilton popped up, and I'm like, hey, this is pretty good.
It's reason enough right there to hate it. Okay, let's dive right into some questions, shall we?
Okay.
Here we go. Lupacillo asks...
Lou!
At this point, I think we can call Lupacillo a friend of the program. Is that safe to say?
He's a mild acquaintance.
Yeah, mild acquaintance that we are familiar with. Lupacillo asks, do you gents believe revisionist history and flat-out lying is an issue recently with game historians? Is there a cure?
Sorry, ask that again.
So do you gents believe revisionist history and flat-out lying is an issue recently with game historians?
Game historians.
Is there a cure? So it's really two questions.
I wish there was an example with that.
So there's a big difference between interpreting events and reinterpreting events, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. But, this is specific to video games, right? So there are definitely, you and I have pointed out a few of them, of the myths that are out there.
Yeah.
In regards to video games, right? Like E.T. is the worst game ever made.
I was
totally not true.
Or just the whole story
Not
behind true. E.T. that they you know, they had so many returned ETs that they threw them in the garbage or in the landfill, and it's like they dig it up and like, yeah, there was ET in there, but there was a lot of Atari games because Atari was doing horribly at that time. You know, there's more to the story than that. You know, I don't know if you'd call that revisionist history. And the thing is,
I think the story took its own mythical legs, is what I guess I'm saying, right? And it became something that it wasn't. You know, the status of that story became mythical versus being historical.
Yeah, and the thing is that historical revisionism and flat out lying are really two different things. They can be the same thing, but just to call someone a historical revisionist is not the same necessarily as being a liar. Like, someone can really believe what they believe and think it's right, and it might be contrary to what the main historical story is.
It could just be either bad critique, which I think there's a lot of.
Frankly. Yeah, that's true.
But it also could be, you know, an example of confirmation bias. If I go into and which is an example of bad criticism, so I'm probably just saying the same thing over again. But if I walk into a particular text with a particular bent to the way that I see it, and all I do is go in and make a giant echo chamber where I just say that over and over again, that's just confirmation bias. I haven't really found anything. Well, all I've done is cherry pick my. It's and that, I think, is what Lupacilla is talking about.
Okay, I can see that. And the thing is that I think for a long time we still have a lot of primary sources in video games. Video games are still not that old. So video game history, we still have a lot of information is lost in the terms of like a lot of information is lost because it just wasn't really being tracked. But a lot of the people who were involved with stuff, like, it just because information is lost doesn't necessarily mean it's gone forever in the case of video games.
Exactly.
Because some of the people that worked on it are still alive. You can still find them and ask them, like, hey, what happened here? And they're like, oh, yeah, that. Okay, yeah, no, this is how we built, this is how I made Adventure for the Atari 2600. The primary
sources are still very much a part of our contemporary history.
For the most part, yes, and that's starting to not be the case, unfortunately, as some people start dying off and things get even old and people get even older, and just some artifacts are lost to time. But so of course it's going to get worse. There will be more revisionism, more lying about the past, especially if it benefits certain people to tell their own story and make them look better. But I don't know if I'd say it's rampant.
No, I just think that it is I would say it's more of a heuristic. Okay. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of people that are gallivanting around the YouTubes today that say, hey, I'm going to do a critical analysis of X, or at least that's how they sell themselves. And what you're getting is about an inch deep, right? Mm-hmm.
That's what she said.
I'm not saying, you know, anybody can read Wikipedia, right? What I'm saying is trying to do some analysis on what those kinds of things mean. What I think a lot of us do is try to retell texts as critical analysis, and that doesn't really do much, rather than trying to do some critical analysis on it. And that is rampant. That is absolutely rampant. And I think to a certain extent that creates a certain kind of cultural and historical revisionism, because we all just keep repeating the same inch deep criticism of something all over the place. And that creates, you know, confusion among the gaming community.
Create confusion and convert.
That's the Byron Sanders way.
And I will give anyone who can tell me without looking who Byron Sanders is a cookie.
Yeah, that's pretty good. That would be pretty awesome. All right, so here we go. Let's see. Acadian Canadian asks, We do love our Canadian fans, by the way. The Canadian asks, you guys are in charge of Final Fantasy 16.
Oh, God. Please no.
But you can only take 5 characters from previous Final Fantasy games. Which 5 do you bring on your team?
Characters? Oh, okay.
That's a damn good question,
Ooh.
if I may say so myself.
That's okay. That's interesting.
I know number 1 for you.
Yep.
I already know.
Yuffie.
So let's move to the yeah. So let's move to the yeah. It'll be Yuffie. Let's see. I think. Would you take Kane over Cecil or Cecil, however you want to say it?
No, I don't find Kane all that interesting. Honestly,
I'd probably take Cecil.
I don't know if I'd take Cecil. He's Cecil.
I would.
It's not Cecil.
I've always said it's Cecil until I played it on the Game Boy, and then it says Cecil all
the
time.
I don't care. Cecil.
Yeah.
Screw you. Let's see. I'm going with.
So who would you take then?
Going with Tifa. Going with Celis. Going
Tifa?
with. No, I'm just going all in female. Wait, what kind of game are we making this? Dating sim.
Dating sim. Yeah. So Tifa and then Celis and yeah.
No. Locke from Final Fantasy VI. I'd go with Celis from Final Fantasy VI.
Celis from Final Fantasy VI is pretty amazing. How about
I was gonna pick up from Final Fantasy VI.
Yeah, but we can't totally dominate this unless you're making a statement about how bad every other Final Fantasy game is.
Well, okay, so I'm like thinking about 10, and it's like I don't know. Some of those characters are pretty annoying.
I completely agree with that. I was just trying to think through like who would I take?
I like Riku from Final Fantasy X. Final Fantasy VIII, acceptable. I could really leave all the characters.
All the characters from Final Fantasy VIII.
Cloud's annoying in 7.
He's really annoying. But there's got to be somebody from Final Fantasy VII that we're forgetting, like
Barrett. Sid?
I wouldn't take Barrett. Sid, maybe. Sid's a pretty good.
We're getting way too into this.
Yeah, we really. I know. Way too into this.
Okay, 4. 4. You got Tella the Mage. He's an old cantankerous, person like my cat.
Yep. Spoony Bard.
Yep.
Yang.
Meh.
Yeah.
Meh. Honestly, I could go all Final Fantasy VI characters. So.
I could go Final Fantasy. I think part of the reason why that game was great was because it was right on the edge where you could have well-rounded characters that were still believable before you saw them in 3D and they were not believable.
Uh-huh.
I still hold to that. I still think that one of the reasons that Final Fantasy VI is so good is because it had all of the great development of a cinematic masterpiece, but you still didn't actually get to see what they were really trying to do in 3D because it would have horrified you.
Yeah.
Like Final Fantasy VII. So, all right, I'm going to defer and say exactly the same thing you did.
Okay, we'll move on.
Okie dokie. Here we go. Long term, maybe one of the first fans we ever had here at Clan of the Grey Wolf. Carrara 2 has a question. Hello, a question for you. Are there any games, bands, movies, or shows you remember fondly from the 90s that the world at large seemed to have forgotten? Carrara, do you have the next 3 hours to talk about this question?
Yeah, that's a really loaded question.
Because
you got to pick one.
All right, so let's do one of each. Both. All right, so what game from the 90s do you fondly remember that's been forgotten?
Not necessarily game. It was like TV show, music, group, game.
Just games, bands, or movies? Games, band, movies, or shows. Sorry. Games, bands, movies, or shows. Do you want to just pick one?
Just pick one. I'm going to pick a TV show.
Okay.
You go music.
I'll do bands. Go ahead.
Yeah, okay. I'm going to go with Samurai Pizza Cats.
Oh.
What is it? Ooh. It's a great show.
Show's horrible.
Was it?
But was it? But wait. I have an actual relevant question. Wasn't Samurai Pizza Cats actually from the 80s? Wasn't it an 80s Japanese show that was dubbed in the 90s?
Potentially, I can't remember honestly, but it was in America in the 90s.
Yeah, fair enough.
Because it was bought by Saban, and they I can't remember. They either didn't have the Japanese translation or it was done really poorly. So they just took. It was like this horrible take on like either Sentai series or Ninja Turtles or something like that. And these like cats who ran a pizza shop, and they were samurais that would beat the bad guys every week. But they just were like, we don't give a crap about this. Let's just make this as funny as we can with random off the wall scripts. And it's so funny. Oh my God. At least to me as a teenager, it was really funny. It's probably still funny.
Because so I challenge that notion, but we'll see. Maybe you should just go grab some and find out.
I should. Then again, I should look some up.
I did just sticking with the shows. I'll mention one really quickly. I did just watch. So I found out that MTV on Sundays actually shows Ren and Stimpy again, just like they used to back in the old days.
That's not necessarily a lesser known one, but yeah.
No, but Ren and Stimpy is so amazing. That show I still think of things every once in a while that just make me laugh out loud. It was so good. And at least until John Kricfalusi left, and then it wasn't very good anymore.
And the Samurai Pizza Cat game on Famicom was pretty good. I have a bonus one that probably no one has ever heard of. It was on for like a few shows on Saturday mornings called AJ's Time Travelers.
Yeah.
Yeah. See, there you go. That's a really random one. That was like this kid who went traveling through history. I can still remember the theme song, and they learned something about history at a particular point. Anyway,
yeah.
Also, extra bonus one for Beekman's World because that show is ridiculously awesome even today.
Yeah, I looked that one up too recently, and it's still really good.
Okay, so I did 3. Sorry, but go ahead.
Yeah, so that's okay. I can do a lot of bands. I remember a lot of bands
on the run
from the 90s that were never really the standard bearers of either pop music or counter pop music, as it were, that have either been forgotten or significantly downplayed in terms of their importance. And there are a lot of them, but I would say something like, for example, Toad the Wet Sprocket.
Oh, All I Want.
All I Want is all everybody ever remembers, but Toad the Wet Sprocket had some amazingly good music and a very, very different sound as compared to the rest of their peers. It's a very unique sound. They have a new album, relatively new album. It's about a year old, and the album is incredibly good. It's got a song called "The Moment." And if any of you have not heard "The Moment" by Toad the Wet Sprocket, but you remember who Toad the Wet Sprocket is, listen to that song. It's phenomenal. You'll love it, and it sounds like vintage Toad. Following along in that vein, because if I were going to get into the influential and that kind of thing, I'd go a whole different place, right?
No, not necessarily.
I would. I mean, I'd be talking about a lot of bands that are much more influential.
Yeah. But I mean, you don't necessarily need to go that way.
No, I'm not. I'm not going to go down that road. How about, I'll just name a couple. The Gin Blossoms.
Okay.
Collective Soul.
Collective Soul is really good. I like Collective Soul.
And along with Collective Soul, and Gin Blossoms would be last on that list, but Collective Soul and the band Live.
Oh.
Band Live.
Wow, you're really taking me back now to high school.
Live in some ways was beyond their own time. I mean, because they had a lot of really dark stuff. Reminds me of that day. See, that's a great song, but that's not necessarily the first live song anybody's going to play. They're just going to play, Lightning Crashes or, I don't know,
that reminds me
I Alone or, whatever, right?
That reminds me of like something on student television at UNC.
Yeah, see, that's what I mean. Like
they played something with that song in it. Oh my God!
Like any band you can go through and name like 8 really good songs right off the top of your head from the 90s. That's awesome, right? I can do that with Live. They're amazing. I can do that with Collective Soul. I could even do that with Toad. But anyway, no one really talks about that anymore. What's funny is if you look at terrestrial radio. Remember when we were younger, like you'd listen to like how things change over time. Like there were oldie stations, and there was like classic rock stations.
Oh yeah.
And then there was like the today, like there's like 80s, 90s, and today, right? Now what's funny is all of those stations have been replaced by like crappy 90s stations. So like, well, at least up here it has, right? So now you have like these crappy 90s stations, and like 80s music gets played on classic rock stations now.
Yeah.
Just totally crazy, right? Anyway.
There you go.
I just think that's really funny. If you pop on one of those 90s stations, you're just going to laugh out loud. Hey, is that Blink-182? Yeah, it is. Okay.
Our Lady Peace.
See what we got here.
My first girlfriend was obsessed with them.
Who?
Our Lady Peace.
Oh, Our Lady Peace. Holy shnikes. 7 Mary 3. Do we want to name every band in that vein that is completely and utterly forgettable?
Let's not, and move on to the next question.
Let's move on. Millennial Falcon, clever name, I like
nice.
That, asks, what are your thoughts on the ethics of AI? E.g., if there is a sentient computer waiting for what are years in its perspective, thousands of clock cycles, while it waits to answer questions from humans, do we try to consider the ethical implications while we develop AI, or deal with the consequences later? Deal with the consequences later.
So we're talking about sentience. Yes. Yeah, I don't think not anyone. I'm sure there are people thinking about the ethical implications of that, but not enough. It's like it's like the amount of people that think of what would really happen if aliens came down and contacted us tomorrow. It's like there are people thinking about that, but not a lot. I get the feeling it's not a serious concern at this point because, frankly, the alien thing is like who knows? That could a very, very low chance of that happening. The sentient computer
infinitesimally low compared to even the computers, right?
Yeah, but the sentient computer thing is like everyone's like, yeah, that's way far off if ever. So,
oh my God, yeah.
But it's again, that's an interesting philosophical debate and question in general.
Yeah. We should talk about that sometime. All right. Let's see. Rosalon asks, what game would you like to see be adapted into a movie/TV series? Now, this is an interesting question because I think you would give different answers if you were answering about movie or if you were answering about TV series.
Yeah.
So I actually would argue that the Halo series would be a better TV series than it would be a movie.
I think that is a TV series or a movie. It's something on Netflix.
Yes, right. So, but my point is, if I were going to adapt it into something that I would do right now, I would adapt it into a TV series because I think it would make a damn good TV series. And if any of you have watched the new... So they adapted the first novel, The Fall of Reach, into a film. This was done by the current owners, the current developers of Halo.
Bungie?
It's a number. No, Bungie's not the current developer of Halo.
Oh, sorry. I don't know. I don't play Halo.
Gosh, why can't I think of it? It's got a number in it. Sorry, guys. I can't believe I'm blanking on this right now. Anyway, they developed a movie, and it's basically an in-engine movie. So it takes like the Halo 4 engine and makes a movie. Whatever. All right.
Red versus Blue.
It's really not that great. In fact, I would say it's pretty bad. And part of the reason is because the novel's not really that great. I'm going to say it. It's not very great. It's written by an ex-military guy, so all the military stuff in it is really interesting. The rest of it's really not.
343 is the developer, by the way.
343. Sorry, I couldn't think of that. I knew it was a number. Anyway, it's not good. But part of the reason is because it's a movie. So I'm trying to tell the story of The Fall of Reach. Well, The Fall of Reach is an awesome story in the Halo universe, but the novel The Fall of Reach starts with the beginnings, right? So where the Spartan program comes from, the way that they pick John, how he becomes, John 113, I think, 117. Sorry, he becomes John 117, which becomes the Master Chief. So they invent this whole story behind it, and they don't ever tell the story of the Fall of Reach, which is fascinating. It's almost like a Battlestar Galactica kind of story, which is awesome. So to me, that would be much better told in a television series where trouble's brewing and a season can end when Reach is falling, right? Where you could do that in like a 10-hour span, which I think would be really cool, right? rather than trying to do it in an hour and a half or 2 hours.
All right, so I got an idea, and stick with me here.
Yeah.
A TV show based off of Madden. So like you get a bunch of really big guys and you put them on two teams, right?
Ooh, this is a good idea.
And then like weekly, let's say, maybe on Sundays, they like play against each other in this Madden game. What's it called? It's like, what's it called? Like football or something, I guess.
No, that's soccer. You're thinking of the wrong thing.
Oh, I'm sorry. So Madden ball is what it is.
Right, Madden ball.
And they try to get this oblong ball into each other's end zone, right? And try to score the most points.
I think this is a good idea, but I don't think it should be limited to Sundays. I think we're going to have to see it on like Thursdays and Mondays.
Now, see, now you're getting
maybe
kind of silly.
Sometimes Saturdays.
This isn't going to work. There's no way this would take off. Yeah. In all seriousness, honestly, going back into the hopper a little bit there in time, something like a Baldur's Gate movie or something like that would be really interesting, I think. Or, oh man, what was the other one I had? Shoot, it was something else around that time period. Oh, like a Star Wars The Old Republic or Knights of the Old Republic.
Oh, that's a great idea. That's a great idea.
Because I remember when that came out, people were like, this story is so much better than the prequels because they came out around the same time. And I still think that's a really decent story.
Do you think it would work as a movie trilogy, or do you think it would work as a TV show?
I'd like to see it more as like a mini series or something like that, or even even a TV show, because that'd be pretty decent. But
I think it would be great. This is what's missing, right? Great stories and the ability to tell them well, which is great. Okay, good. Moving on. A
game with tight ends sneaking into the other team's end zones will just never work.
No, ever.
Okay, wait. Slight detour. Did you see that Martellus Bennett's going to the Patriots?
I did. I heard about that.
You excited for the Patriots to go 19-0 this year? Because they got two Gronks
right now. Everybody up here right now is just screaming incessantly about how much of a turncoat Robert Kraft is. So I'll let you know as soon as that dies down.
Whatever. Boston sports fans are the worst.
Oh God. Lucius T asks, I know Rue likely hasn't watched it yet.
Luscious T, thank you.
Oh, Luscious T, sorry. I know Rue likely hasn't watched it yet, but Commodore, were you satisfied with the first season of Colony? I loved it. I also loved it. Thought it was great. I was less satisfied by the ending than I was the entirety of the season. So, in my mind, Colony is one of the best, if not the best, sci-fi shows on TV right now, because it's subdued sci-fi. It is more of like a tension sci-fi more than it is kind of overtly technology and ships and all this kind of stuff. But for those of you that haven't watched it, you absolutely should. Colony is a show by Carlton Cuse, who was an executive producer of Lost, and it's also executive produced by Josh Holloway from Lost. And it's a story about what has happened on Earth after some visitors come and arrive and basically, kind of enslave the population to where they're afraid of doing even basic things. So great show. Totally watch it. I liked it a lot. Now they even showed previews for the next season already, which is kind of crazy, but I was a little bit, they had to do that because I was a little bit upset with the ending, but other than that, it was great.
You know what I did watch is Fuller House.
Fuller House is pretty damn good. I'm gonna make that argument right now, and I'm not even being.
For what it is, I thought it was pretty decent.
Yeah. Did you watch the whole thing?
The whole thing.
See, I'm like I got like maybe 4 episodes, 5 episodes.
Oh man, that mid-season cliffhanger where Stephanie like gets shot and dies.
Oh yeah, that's terrible.
And turns out to be like the next Queen of England.
Yeah.
And there's like a whole
and marries John Stamos, not Jesse, not Uncle Jesse.
She
marries John Stamos.
Yeah,
right.
Her ghost does because she died. But yeah.
Right. It's well, you have to, you know, it's the first California marriage between a ghost and a human. That's the whole story.
No, but I mean, I thought it was goofy, but I thought it was actually pretty good. I actually enjoyed the kids. I think
the kids
more than I thought I would.
No, the kid,
There's
not the
three of
kids.
them.
The kid.
Which
yeah,
kid?
No,
the little kid?
The little Danny Tanner. Perfect.
He was pretty good.
Perfection.
I didn't like the girl so much at first. She got better.
Hated the girl.
I like.
Hated the
Well,
girl.
it's because you hate women. But
no, it's not
the
because
older
of that.
boy was also pretty good. And you
the
know
older
what?
boy's pretty good.
You know who was a
right.
real surprisingly good? Was Kimmy Gibbler.
Yeah. So I remember her not
good.
being able to act at all, and that she was terrible. Like, and
well,
you
she
know.
was also a teenager. What do you want?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying she's a great actress or anything, but she held her own. I mean, it was fine.
Yeah, the whole thing was fun. It's good.
Yeah, I mean, the whole time. I mean, you can practically see Bob Saget in the first episode biting his tongue because he's sitting there like, "Oh my God, this is so absurd. What the hell am I doing here? Oh yeah, I'm collecting a check." Right?
Yeah.
Like Bob Saget acted like he was checked out the entire time he's on set.
Yep.
He basically phoned it in. He walked in and he's like, "Okay, what are the lines?" "Oh, okay. I am saying my lines now. Okay, bye." Right? I mean, that's Bob Saget's involvement in this show.
Yeah,
right?
Which is fine.
At least like, you know, Lori Loughlin and John Stamos, like they gave it their best.
Who looks John Stamos
who
looks better than he did like 20 years ago, which is ridiculous.
You look at like his hair out to here and like, you know.
Anyway, also I haven't seen Daredevil season 2 yet, but I want to. So
check it out, Fuller House. It's good.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Here we go. Pond Life asks, question: Disney World, do you think it's appreciated more when you're a kid or when you're an adult?
Depends on what kind of adult you are.
I don't think so. I think it's here's my theory.
Some adults are just like, I would never want to go to Disney World. That sounds like hell.
It's true.
Some are just like that.
I think it's different.
That's true.
It's not better or worse. It's different. So when you go as a kid, it is what the place was designed for. It's designed for you. It's designed and built for you. When you go as an adult, you go knowing it's built for kids, and you either love that concept or you hate that concept.
No, but the thing is, Disney World, some places I could agree, but Disney World has stuff for adults too.
Like what?
Epcot. Almost everything.
Epcot
is the place that kids are like, that's the boring one. I don't like that one. And when you're an adult, you're like, ooh, this is actually really cool. They got this interesting restaurant over here, and they have this tour
food and wine festival.
Yeah, exactly, stuff like that, you know. But there's also the stuff that you can kind of let go a little bit and let your inner kid out, like, oh man, Space Mountain. Who doesn't like Space Mountain? You know, things like that.
Sounds awesome. But Space Mountain is the Magic Kingdom. That's not Epcot.
Shut your face. Well, I'm talking about all of Disney World.
Now, Mission Space, which is definitely an adult ride,
if you know what I mean,
is in Epcot, and that's
the Tomorrowland Transit Authority is an adult ride, if you know what I mean.
Thank you. That was really disappointing too. I went on that thing and it was just like, man, this sucks. But here's the thing: when you go as a kid, you're supposed to be wide-eyed. Everything's amazing. When you go as an adult, you realize that you're either reliving your time as being a kid, which they actively, openly market, right?
Sure. Yeah.
They sell you on the fact that you're going to go enjoy what you used to enjoy as a kid.
Let yourself go.
Do it again. Yep.
If you can't do that, don't bother.
Exactly. So they sell that to people. But there's also, if you bring children to Disney World, you appreciate it in a completely different way. It's not about you.
So, it's not about you. So for someone like Silver Ogre, who responds with, you know where they have interesting restaurants? Every normal city.
So true. Listen.
I mean, yes.
Here's my opinion. So 15 years between my last Disney World visit and the one that I just took.
That's
okay.
True. You're uniquely suited amongst the two of us to actually answer this question.
15 years. Okay. I'll tell you this. There were plenty of things there that were different that I thought, wow, this is a great addition. I'm glad I saw this. And there was just enough that was exactly the same that I said, if that span had been 10 years, I think it would have been too soon.
Too soon.
So I somewhere between like 8 and 12 years, you make that transition and you're like, okay, yeah, I'm good. Like I've seen all this stuff before. I don't need to see anything else. And it almost makes you angry because I like to go to a lot of theme parks, and I like to see the things that they change and the things that they evolve, so on and so forth. Disney, who's making more money than any of them, right, changes so little. I think I told you, you literally go see the it's no longer sponsored by Exxon or whatever, but the Hall of Energy or whatever,
the
Bill Nye and Ellen DeGeneres.
That same thing from 15 years ago.
It's exactly, and it was old then.
Yeah,
okay,
a little old. It
was old then because it was like Ellen watching Jeopardy, in like the mid '90s, right? It's horrible. It's so terrible, and they play it every single day. And you're telling me they can't find a way to better use that space, and yet they tear up Mr. Toad's Wild Ride.
Toad the Red
Come on,
Sprocket's Wild Ride.
Exactly. Frustrating.
Inner angst from the Commodore.
So it's different. It's different. It's not better.
And you fear change.
And I fear change. How about this one? A good friend of the program, Shane from Rerez.
Yeah.
Has a question. How do you guys feel about a potentially upgrading video game console and treating them as though they were PCs?
Well, I mean, that basically is a PC at that point. Like, what's the purpose of a console if it's something that you have to... So this is why peripherals...
Well, let's define it, okay?
Peripheral... Hold on. Okay, go ahead.
Let's define it, because this is not what we're talking about. A PC... So if I took my PC right now and I said I want to make a new PC out of this, I basically rip out all the guts and I put in all new guts.
Right.
Now I've upgraded my PC, but really what I've done is buy a new computer and stuff it into the old one.
Right.
The stuff that people are talking about with consoles is not that at all, right? They're like, if I took a Sega Genesis and I pop a 32X on top of it, right? Have I upgraded the system? Yeah. But have I upgraded it in the same way that you upgrade a PC? No.
No. So this is something different.
Yeah. If I buy the PlayStation VR and I get my little compute box that sits next to my PlayStation now, have I upgraded the system? Yeah. Have I done the same thing that I do to a PC? Absolutely not, right? So my point is that what I think is interesting about this, so this all stems from the concept recently of people talking about iterative versions of consoles. But what I like to think of it is that there's a rumor now that Sony is working on a PlayStation 4.5. Now that is interesting to me. As in,
really?
I have a PlayStation 4. I want a PlayStation 4.5, which integrates all this new stuff. And I get new stuff when I buy that thing. So I have it. Think of the most popular tech in the world, right? iPhones, right? iPhone is 2/3 of Apple's business. What is the difference? Somebody in the world tell me what the freaking difference between an iPhone 6S and an iPhone 6 is.
There's an S.
They even market the fact that nothing has changed except everything, right? That's a play on the fact that everything looks exactly the same, everything works exactly the same.
Isn't it?
Right?
What is different? There's some stuff.
Here's my point.
Maybe.
People buy it because it's not really another version. It's not the new, Xbox 720. It's because it's really just the same thing, just with newer stuff on it. And if that new stuff is something that you want to do, you just buy it.
Hey, so I'm thinking of something where you either rip guts out and put new ones in, or you add new guts, which I think is what Shane's talking about. And
that's never going to happen.
Well, I'm not that it's never going to happen. I just don't think it'll be successful because, to some extent, this has happened in the past. The Nintendo 64 expansion pack, of course, is that's just adding more memory, basically more RAM. But there's been and anything like that, which is essentially a peripheral. And yes. I'm gonna count ripping out guts and putting new guts in as a peripheral. Historically, have sold through terribly on game consoles, and I don't think that's a great business move. I don't think it'll catch on. And here is the main problem. Most spectacularly exposed with recently by the Kinect on not only the Xbox 360 but the Xbox One.
Yeah,
that's basically upgrading your console very significantly.
bingo.
And developers are like, "What the hell are we going to do with this?" And to the point where, okay, we're going to force people to buy this on the Xbox One, and people are like, "I don't know, it's expensive," so they're like, "Well, we'll rip it out." And developers are like, "Oh, cool, we don't have to worry about that anymore." And there are like no games coming out for the Kinect really, effectively on the Xbox One, because it's like they are assuming people are not going to buy their Xbox One and say, "You know what I really need? I need a Kinect. Right. I need to spend another $100, $200 for something that may or might not be useful on this game console to upgrade it." You know, they're like, "No, we want to make a game that people will play, not some smaller percentage of this install base."
Now, the other interesting, you're absolutely right. I agree 100%. But the interesting part here is that really, when you think about it, CPUs are commoditized now because CPU is so cheap and because there really isn't a lot of innovation around CPU anymore, right? Compute is just cheap. So what changes are software. What changes are, I mean, GPUs arguably are still, even GPU, right? I mean, there's no magic bullet there either, right? My point is, I could see something where you have like a module where you would add a module, like a 32X, like an expansion pack, where something gains more memory or has more hard drive space or has an SSD drive or any of these other things that you can do with them, or allow for expansion ports or whatever the case might be. That I could see as being an upgrade, but the real point is that you have a system that is capable of playing software, and now it can play new software, right? Mm-hmm. That's all an upgrade really is, right? Why does that take? My point is, I think, or I guess my question is, does that take a full iterative next step from the PlayStation 4 to the PlayStation 5? Or do they have the idea, right, of something like a PlayStation 4.5, which is really like the iPhone 6S, where it does all the same stuff that the PlayStation 4 does, that the iPhone 6 does. It's just got a couple new shiny bells and whistles.
It might not take all that to go the full iterative step, but if they want to sell it, they will make that full iterative step. They'll at least call it that.
An indicator.
Yes. And this might be part of the pointing toward consoles becoming eventually not as we know them today.
I agree.
So,
I agree. I mean, and all you have to do is look, and I really do think this is a novel idea. I know people have been slamming it in the media, but the new P series from Vizio, the TV company, they have the E series, the M series, now they have the P series. The P series is an amazing, in my mind, step forward for TV, because it's a TV that's basically not a TV at all, right? It's basically a giant display that is made to accept, wireless input, right? It really doesn't even have a remote control. Like, it comes with a 6-inch tablet, which is the controller for the TV, right?
Right.
This is a concept that I can get behind, because at that point, it's like, now my game console can be anything. My game console could be this tablet. I'm throwing it up there on the screen, right? And so, in other words, I don't need to invent a new TV. I just need to invent, new ways to play on that TV, right? I don't need to make it, have the biggest and baddest specs. I don't have to have the greatest sensors and the newest tech. All I have to be able to do is find new, cool experiences that I can put onto that screen. That's cool. That's what video game consoles should be focusing on.
All right.
They've been trying to redesign the set-top box for how many years now? And all I think we've really learned is that people don't really want set-top boxes. It's kind of a useless middleman when you think about it.
Not learned the lesson yet, obviously.
They have not. They have definitely not.
So, where are we then with the episode?
All right, I think we are pretty good. I just saw a this is just an awesome side note. Psychopather just tweeted Fuller House, where Stephanie Tanner gets shot and her ghost marries John Stamos. Parentheses, not Uncle Jesse, John Stamos. Probably my favorite tweet I've ever seen, and under 148 characters. So that got a favorite and a like. I'm glad we got to hang out with that, introduce that into the world as we did. I hope someone finds a way to get that to the Full House people.
I love it.
Let's do one more question and then we're going to wrap it up. Kefka44 asks, Kefka's a great character to bring into.
Oh, well, yeah, that's true.
This game too, right?
Kefka44
like asks, are you or Rue worried the MST3K reboot won't have the same spark as the original one had 20 years ago?
Sorry, ask that again. I completely missed what you just said.
Are you or Rue worried that the MST3K reboot
won't
have the same spark as the original one had 20 years ago?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely am, and it's not necessarily for any particular reason other than, gosh, MST3K was just really great. Now, I think you could put on almost any episode in the background, and I'm going to laugh, I'm going to giggle, I might even laugh out loud. But not every episode is phenomenal. It's just not. Yeah. But the new one, I think, is going to have a hard target to hit in that regard because it's so hard to have misses these days. It's not like it was before where you could have a couple down episodes and, get away with it. People just lose interest so quickly.
Yeah, and I mean, worried might be a strong word, but do I expect it to be as good or better? No.
No, I don't either.
Could it be? Yeah.
Yeah, potentially. Who knows? I mean,
I am mildly
Joel
ambivalent.
is behind. Joel is funny.
Joel is funny. I like Mike better, but we already went over that. So.
Well, yeah, but Joel.
I mean, Mike was
Joel
the head writer.
He's the writer. Mike is better as a host. And writer.
But some of my favorite episodes are Mike episodes.
Absolutely, 100%. And by the way,
in terms of the writing,
follow Mike on Twitter. He's just as hilarious in 148 characters.
I should. I don't know why I
don't. All right. So I think we've we're an hour and 36 minutes. So we're doing pretty good. An hour of
that being questions. So
an hour of that being questions, like normal. Hey man, people have good questions. Well, thank you for joining us, folks, and thank you for the flexibility of joining us on a week where we normally wouldn't even have a show.
Yeah.
So it's not really a bonus episode. It was a delayed episode. So thank you for coming to us on an off night.
It actually worked. So that's good.
Worked out well. YouTube was fixed.
Thank you, YouTube.
Apparently it was broken. So thank you, YouTube, for getting fixed. Not like that. Not like you brought your cast to the vet kind of fixed.
Right.
But fixed. We will be back next week, our usual time slot.
Yeah. So next Wednesday, 8 p.m., that'll be March 30th, where we will have Echo Screen Live, the musical.
I'm doing the Bill Cosby and shaking my head and not saying anything.
Yep. I'm doing the Rue and saying yes.
It may or may not have any episode like that we've even referenced to this point in the show thus far. But anyway, whatever the topic, whatever the means, whatever we decide to talk about, we hope that you will be there to join us here on the Echo Screen Live. So keep up with us. You know where to find me now with the whole It's the Commodore thing. You can follow Rue in similar fashion. Rue_COTGW at Rue_COTGW. And we will see you next time when we talk about something equally as interesting, perhaps even more interesting. You never know.
Maybe. I mean, if it's musicals, then definitely. So
don't push your luck. just accept what you got.
It's time.
That's my philosophy.
It's time to have a musical. Just saying.
It's time. It might be time. It might be time. All right, folks. Yeah. So until then, if you have any ideas for the program, please feel free to share it. I am the Commodore, and for Rue, this has been the Echo Screen, the official podcast of the Clan of the Grey Wolf, and there is no reset button.
Thank you very much, John Stamos. Hey, Cooper. So you just came back from the vet. The vet. How are you feeling?
Well, I had to get my old man hip checked. I broke it 3 times falling down the stairs last week. They gave me a lot of Geritol, and
You sound just like Baby Huey.
I got my dinner in at 4 p.m. sharp, so feel pretty good about that.
And your AARP card?
Yeah, that's in the mail. It's actually it's AARC because I'm a cat. Get it?
Oh yeah. I thought PETA had gotten us over that hurdle. Sorry.
He is such a cranky old man. Just putting that out there.
Cantankerous as hell.
Cat tankerous.